Last time, we covered the triple slash, which is a bit of a complicated topic but important to understand. So, to reward those of you who were able to learn that, or even just those who found it confusing, we're going to get some easy stats today. Yes, we're covering runs and everything to do with runs in the stat sheet. Of course, baseball games are literally won by runs, but how important are runs in the individual sense? Not much at all, to be honest. Sure, it does hold some value, but not nearly as much as the other stats I've mentioned so far. As always, I'll go in depth into runs, earned runs, and RBIs and explain what a good total for each statistic is, but also explain why it's not quite a great stat for true analysis. Though, of course, it's impossible to even begin to understand the stats without knowing what it means from a rule standpoint, so what is a run? Of course, every baseball fan knows that a run is baseball's equivalent of a point or a goal like in other sports. To get a run, you simply make your way around the bases through the basic baseball means. Now, since this isn't a baseball rules channel, I'm going with a simple explanation: go around the bases and touch home plate without being out. So I trust you all understand what a run is. It's a point scored by the runner making it around the base. As a pitcher, you want to prevent this from happening, while if you're on the batting team, you want to generate as many runs as possible. Let's start off with the run stat for the pitchers. For a pitcher, the run stat is added to the stats once a runner crosses home plate through regular play. Whether that be from a combination of giving up hits, home runs, walks, sacrifice flies, sacrifice bunts, really a whole lot of things, there are plenty of chances to add to this category. Of course, you don't want to have this one stack up because if it does, clearly it means you're a bad pitcher, right? Well, the thing is, it's not always the pitcher's fault that a run scores. As discussed in the previous videos, stuff like errors exist, so why should a pitcher be punished for their fielder's mistakes? Well, this is what earned runs are. As defined by the MLB, an earned run is any run that scores without the benefit of an error or a passed ball by the catcher. Basically, if the defense, not a pitcher, makes a mistake that causes the run to score, it is not considered an earned run. With how easy runs and earned runs are to acquire, looking at the statistic itself is pretty much useless. So instead, we will be looking at the stat ERA, which stands for earned run average. Calculated exactly like the per 9 stats, it is calculated by taking your earned runs, multiplying it by 9, and dividing it by the innings pitched. This stat is pretty much the main one used for every single pitcher. So what exactly is a good ERA for a pitcher? Well, for the most part, the average ERA would be around 3.75, so of course, whether you fall above or below that mark signifies if you are below or above average. The less runs the better, but if you want to know what a best in the league contender mark is, think under 2.50. Jacob deGrom has won 2 straight Cy Youngs, and he did so with a 1.70 and a 2.43 ERA in his 2 seasons. Before we move on to the hitting side of things, like OPS, there actually is a park-adjusted stat for ERA. It's either called ERA plus or ERA minus, depending on what site you use. If it ends in a plus, the higher the number the better, while if it ends in a minus, the lower number the better. The average is still set at 100, and just like OPS plus, you can tell how above or below average a pitcher is in the category. For example, a 70 ERA plus means the pitcher was 30% worse than the average. So how do you calculate the stat? Well, I'm going with ERA plus since I prefer to use baseball reference, but ERA plus is calculated by taking the league ERA, dividing it by the player ERA, and multiplying it by 100. Of course, additional calculations are added for a park adjustment, but I'm not going to get into that. So that was what runs meant and what they can be translated into for pitchers, but what about for hitters? Of course, just like pitchers, runs is a stat that is achieved when a runner steps on the plate. As a part of the offense, this is a stat that you want added up in your stat sheet. There's nothing really more to explain in what runs mean to hitters, so I'll get into the stat which explains how a player drives in runs with RBIs. RBIs, which stands for runs batted in, is simply put a counting stat that measures how many runs a player drives in at the plate. Contrary to its name, the player does not need to hit the ball to get an RBI. If the bases are loaded and the batter walks or gets hit by the pitch, they will receive an RBI since they technically drove in the run. A thing to note though is that an RBI is not always given to a player if a run is driven in. For example, if the batter hits the ball where the fielder makes an error, an RBI is not given to the batter. Same thing will happen if the hitter grounds into a double play, which results in a run coming in. For the error part, it's simple. The batter really wasn't responsible for the run coming in, it was more so the mistake of the fielder. Double plays to me are a little more iffy, but whatever, go with it. Now, what is a good number for both runs and RBIs? Well, this is where I'm not going to say anything because it's not really a good stat. Let me explain. I'd like to explain it in the way of home runs. Of course, when you hit a home run, you get the RBI of every runner on base while also getting the RBI for yourself as you drove in your own run. So let's take this into account in the traditional batting order sense. If the first batter hits a home run, the batter can get a maximum of 1 RBI because only they are able to score. Now, shift down to number 4. If the 3 batters before make it on base and the batter hits a grand slam, they get 4 RBIs and 4 runs. I think you should probably start to see the problem. For the most part, the middle part of the order gets many more RBIs as they have more opportunities. To compare the RBIs of the leadoff hitter compared to the cleanup hitter would be unfair. For example, Trey Turner in 2019 mainly played as a leadoff hitter where he batted in 117 of his games. At this position in the lineup, he only accumulated 57 RBIs. Anthony Rendon, on the other hand, played the vast majority of his games playing third in 137 of his games. At the 3 spot, he got an RBI total of 126, which is much higher. Of course, Turner could still get RBIs as the lineup resets, but he typically need to drive in numbers 7 through 9 runners instead of numbers 1 through 3 like Rendon. 1 through 3 hitters are typically much better at getting on base. Normally here I'd be doing a quiz question, but in reality there's only one stat you should really pay attention to, and that's ERA. Even with ERA, it's good to compare that with the other per 9 stats to see where a high or low total comes from. It's easy to identify if a pitcher is good with a low ERA total, but what kind of pitcher they are is difficult by just using ERA, just like the same with hits per 9 and walks per 9. So with that, I'll just heart any general comments this time and answer any questions. Thanks for watching.